Good morning, everyone. I have a pleasure to run the first panel here, and the panel is the future of automation in the industry. For many of us, actually, robotics and automation are two different things, because we humans are always trying to do some copy of us, better than us, which we, on the top on everything, is trying to control as well. So their pure understanding of robotics is a humanoid robot, which you can give the orders and to bring you certain things. Actually, in my career, I started working for the company which is called US Robotics a long time ago. If somebody have watching the movie I'm the Robot, actually the company producing those robots used to be exactly named US Robotics. Actually nothing to do with robots. It was a pure company producing the modems, first US Robotics modems. A long time ago, when you didn't have the broadband, the only way to be in the internet was dial-in modems, and this was the main product of the company. So saying that, I have the pleasure to give the stage to the gentleman who is sitting next to me, Mitko, Nicholas, and George, as well as Phil, who is a bit far away from us. In the current situation, we all understand. We are trying to not wear the mask. I hate to mention again and again the situation that we are all facing today, but would be very interesting to see what is the trend in automation, because up to me, in the current situation, robots and automation could be one of the exits of the situation that we all face it. With that, I'm going with my first question to Phil, who is working for the company based in UK. I just understood that it's near Coventry. The company itself is MTC. Long time ago started with the semiconductor industry, but after that went to the biotech, and obviously they discover that they can be very helpful to many who wants to automate their processes. So from that side, my first question will be, what do you think, Phil? What is most important in one company to introduce to the automation or kind of implement the automation? The culture or technology or processes? Maybe you know this answer better than me.
That's a really, really good question. And the reason it's a particularly good question for me is because we have an interesting set of circumstances in the UK, which is that for any reason, we seem to be, despite having a comparable manufacturing output to some near European neighbours, sort of in terms of value generated, we're well behind the curve in terms of adopting robotics, and the IFR figures that just came out show that to be the case. So I have this question hanging over my head. Why is that? What are the causes for that? Is it, as you say, is it a lack of technology? Is it a cultural issue? It's quite interesting, in fact, that if you look at the figures, our robotics adoption levels as they stand are less than half of that of France, despite having a fairly similar manufacturing GVA. It's less. I think it sits at the same sort of proportion, even less so in Italy. So, is it technology? Well, we don't have any less access to that automation equipment than our near neighbours. So that only leaves a couple of other possibilities in my head as to why we haven't adopted so much. And of course, there might be a question over the skewer of industry. Some industries have sort of more applicable processes to industrial robots, because of course the figures we have are just for industrial robots, not special purpose machines. So if you have a big automotive sector, then the chances are you're going to have more industrial robots. Whereas if your skewer is towards chemical processing or agri-food, or if food production, perhaps you'll have less industrial robots. But the difference in the terms of the skewer of the industry that we have towards our near neighbours isn't sufficient to explain the shortfall. And so it really only leaves one thing, and that's culture. And if you include in culture the training, the capacity to understand the benefits that automation can bring you, and the knowledge and skills to do something with the application of that technology, then this is what I mean by culture. I think the issue that we have is that due to a particular set of let's say political circumstances in the UK, manufacturing wasn't given as much interest as it should have been from the period around about 1970 up to relatively recently. And so innovations, I have to be honest, innovation in terms of manufacturing technology has fallen by the wayside somewhat, for reasons that I could go into at length, but it's probably a different discussion. But the problem you find yourself in is if you haven't been focusing and innovating and updating constantly, it's not as if you can just close that gap in an instant. It's not as if you can just read the books and you can just buy the technology and you can onboard it and get it into your organization and get it to be useful. The whole business of adopting automation is a slow, it should be a slow, well-planned cultural evolution of the business. And the mantra that I like to use is that if buying automation technology won't modernize your business needs to be modernized in order to exploit automation technology properly. And that goes all the way through. This is the thing. I have encountered situations on many occasions whereby people have installed what I call sticking plaster automation. So they've identified something they think is a particular issue, they've pointed at it, and they've engaged with robot providers. And by the way, if you approach a robot provider for a solution, you're going to get a robot. When the answer may have been, a special purpose machine, it may have been smart tools of some sort. There are a whole lot of other things that could have been considered. Realistically, if you want to effectively bring automation into the business, you have to make a long-term plan, because every part of your business ultimately is going to end up being affected. Have you got the right training in place? Is your product design appropriate for automated manufacture? Do you have the right business functions? Are you going to have to connect your new processes up with the ERP system? So ultimately, the journey and it's a long journey. The journey is to plan, at least 10 years ahead and say, this is the factory I want to have. This is the aspiration I have in terms of my product mix, in terms of my output, in terms of my quality, and identify all the milestones to get there. It's not a gap you can close quickly. So bringing the culture to the right place and bringing the business into the right place to support the automation with the right culture. It's a business of long-term planning, and the longer you've been kind of sat still, the harder that first step becomes. So that, I know that's a long answer to a short question, but I'm going to conclude by saying in my view, culture is absolutely crucial, and it's the main barrier.
Thank you for that view. Actually, there is a slogan in English, as you know, the culture is eating the strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And maybe this is describe everything what you said. I understood that you are very experienced with all of that, and probably we'll stay in touch with you for further discussions, because maybe many companies can approach you asking what is the right moment to do the automation. But your answer in short is, guys, you need to have a culture of innovation and adoption, otherwise you cannot do it. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Yes, right.
Thank you. Thank you. So now, with no further ado, I'm going to Georgi Grozdanov from Festo. Actually, they have a big factory here in Bulgaria, and they are in Bulgaria for many years. But before that, Georgi worked for company Vasilev. For those who doesn't know the new name, it's Johnson Control. They are doing a big development here, and Festo has a manufacturing here and have a lot of automation inside. But Georgi has the experience of driverless cars, on many things which is today we call automation. So my question to you, Georgi, would be, don't you think that we are going a bit emotional of implementing the robots and the stuff? So sometimes we're starting with the industries probably which is not the right one to start with. And we discussed with you before that comparing to the car industry, where people is trying now to do the cool thing, driverless cars, probably it would be wiser to start it with trains, which has a single track, and it's much easier to automate that. So upon you, what would be the best industry to start with automation?
This is very interesting question, absolutely, and it is connected again to the culture, what you just discussed with Phil. Difficult answer, to be honest. I can say.
Try.
From one side, I can start from the history. Always it is human being that the people want to automate everything because we are lazy. I mean, the people are lazy, we want everything to automate, and we are going in this direction from
so what you say, sorry to interrupt you, you mean that the robots, it's a new slavery?
Something like this at the end.
That's how it's coming to our minds, yes?
At the end, it is exactly what we are searching for. We are searching somebody to do the job instead of us, and we are only telling to him what to do. And it doesn't matter if we are talking about robots, or we are talking about automation in the factories, or what else, or we are talking about autonomous driving cars. It is the same. I mean, I can give you one example. I mean, for the autonomous driving cars, my wife, she wants a lot these cars to be available now. She already have the license to drive the cars, but she don't want to drive it. And she said, okay, tell me when the car will be ready and I can go in this car after that without any problem. It is normal because really the people want to do, how to say, to adapt somehow.
Yes.
What I mean is that we are searching for somebody to do the simple things, and at the end we can spend more time for more complex things to define and to extend this kind of thing. It is the same for the cars, it is the same for the automation. So when we're speaking about automation in the factories, we are speaking about collaborative robots or some automation lines. The idea is that there is a lot of very basic, simple operations, repeating processes.
Exactly.
Like nobody wants to do that. Can you imagine that I need to sit, for example, 8 hours per day, 5 days per week, maybe more, and doing only to get one screw and to put it here, like this, do nothing more. This is not make sense.
And actually, in the answer on the questionnaire, one of the most automated processes are quality control. Because quality control is exactly that. Check that, and that's all.
Exactly.
So nobody wants to do this 10 times, 100 times
Hundreds,
per day, or
thousands.
maybe 1,000 times per day.
Exactly.
I got it. Very good, interesting answer to that. But my question was more from the side that, you know, automated cars are a very nice thing. But you need to change the rules, you need to change the road signs, you need to do many other things which are much more complex than simple railway and the train which is going that direction. It's much simpler. So sometimes we are approaching this emotionally instead of rationally. Is that right?
This is correct, and it is already, we have this. I mean, for example, for the trains or the subway, most of the things is already automated. The person there is staying only for some specific emergency situations. The same is for the airplanes. Most of the airplanes are automated. Anyway. I can say all of them, and only the pilot is there only to help in some specific situation. And this is already there.
So what you say, we are already living in automated world, but we still don't know about that.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay, the politicians actually, they do know, because they decided in European Union especially regulate already having the rules for artificial intelligence. We still don't have the cars on the roads, but they're already putting the signs. Is that right?
This is true, and there is one more point here which is very specific for the autonomous driving cars, because as you mentioned, for the trains it is only one line and everybody knows, and that's all.
Simple.
For the autonomous driving cars, there is a lot of things which is coming from the, how to say, specific rules need to be defined, and nobody knows how to define this. There is a lot of organizations in Europe and North America who is working on that. I can give you some examples. You have the car and you have some people crossing the street, and if the car stop in emergency situation, then some of the people will be injured and maybe dead in the car. Yes. But if you continue, then the people which are on the street will be dead.
And you need to make the decision.
What should be the decision? For example, on the street you have old people, and in the car you have young people. What should be the decision? And after that, if something happened, who will take the responsibility for that? It is not the driver, because you don't have the driver.
Exactly.
You don't. It is the company who is manufacturing the car.
It is more legislation issue which is related to humanity to make a choice who is going to die.
Exactly.
I was in Boston in the Watson Center of IBM, and I saw they exactly working now on those things, and they do as well recipe prescription because looks like in the medicine this is absolutely impossible anymore for the doctor to be adequate with the drugs and medicines. He needs to read 48 hours for 24 hours.
Yeah.
He cannot do this anymore.
Exactly.
And here is again this legal question: what to prescribe, and why not another thing? And if something is happened, what will be circumstances which led to that, and what needs to be changed or whatever. It's a more legal thing. Okay, I understand. Thank you very much. Now I'm going to Mitko, who I can call you Mitko.
Yes, yeah, of course.
We spent together 10 years at Cisco. Very funny. I worked for Microsoft. I left Microsoft. Mitko came to Microsoft. So we kind of chasing each other.
Yes.
So for me, it's easy to ask you that question, Mitko. But now when you have internet and the cloud grid, if I may say so, how you see this related to automation? Because basically we're talking about the Internet of Things.
Yes.
How to manage all of the devices. We're still not there, because the first time when we talked, when I heard Internet of Things was 2009 maybe. Since that time we still don't have a single system, but don't you think that the cloud today can do certain jobs from that perspective, and what industries would be interesting? I know that you're working with one of the largest companies in that area. Can you give us some idea?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Peter. So what we see is the cloud itself cannot scale to the Internet of Everything today. Maybe we see around 5% of the machine data actually reaching the cloud. So
only 5%?
Yeah, only 5%.
That's too low.
Yes, it's too low. So we're actually looking to bring the edge, intelligent edge, to the whole equation, where we can have compute and intelligence very close to the machines, to the processes, to the data acquisition.
So what you do, you basically transfer from the center, from the cloud to the edge to the machines.
Exactly.
Oh,
yes.
You know, Pink Floyd used to have one song, "Welcome Back to the Machines." Do
yes,
you remember
welcome
that?
back to the, yeah.
It was 1970, by the way, and in that song they say, "Oh my son, where you have been," or "Don't tell me because I know," something like that. Is that true?
That's completely true, Peter. And what we see is the global motion. Yes, you know the
so
cool
tell
stuff.
us. Sorry.
What we see the global motion is we have the intelligence in the cloud. Now we're bringing it to the edge, and then we want to bring it on the sensors themselves. So that's the next step, which is the tiny machine learning, where we're bringing the intelligence, data acquisition, data processing on the sensor level. So microns of energy consumption will bring all the intelligence decision making on all these small sensors.
But what you said, in any machine you need to have certain computing power as well?
We have.
We do already
We have 50 billion microcontrollers.
Anyway, that's what you said. Anyway.
Yes, and they can be smart. And we can actually push the intelligence for Internet of Everything down to the sensor of the windshield, down to the sensor controlling your own.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it's technology of today.
So basically you are using that power which is already inside into the machines today, but we do not use it entirely in smart way to do that. And you connect this to the cloud. That's what you do?
Yes, on a global scale. Because we have customers, I'll just give you an example.
Give me industry
with a transportation company.
Yes.
So they're transporting containers. It's a public story. Maersk.
Yes,
they have 380,000.
Is that right?
Yes.
Dutch. Okay.
And so they have 380,000 containers. All of them connected to Internet of Things.
So if they're in the ship somewhere on the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, you can know exactly what's going on.
Ships, terminals. So they have the big picture and they can understand their complete end-to-end track and trace. They can spin out all these different.
So they know each time what container in what place when he is going to arrive and stuff like that.
Yeah, also hard stops, temperature, tempering.
I mean, this is the Internet of Things, isn't it?
Yes, it's today.
It's today.
Very
interesting. Thank you, Mitko. It was a very cool thing. I never thought that we do not use the computer power of the machines today entirely. And I thought that you're going to build another thing, which you're going to, our cars today are automated enough. but they're still very stupid and very broke, kind of not durable. Let's put it that way. Okay, guys, you just opened the Pandora box now. And with that, I'm going to Nicholas. You know, as you probably guess, there is nothing worse than the little knowledge, because I'm ex-computer engineer who was qualified to be the sales guy, and in the end I ended up with the, you know, moderator. That's a good kind of a career development. But anyway, Nicholas, I know that people think that software coding is for somebody else. You know, those freaks are staying all day, they are behind the glass doors, they have a big computer center, they have the screens, usually they have glasses because they all the time watching the screen. But I know that software industries looks a bit different. When I started my career a long time ago, I tried to coding on the using assembler, because it was closer to the machines, as we discussed already. This is basically the language that machines understand perfectly. 1, 0, 1, 0, that's all. No emotions, not you know, additional things. After that, the next level languages came, like C++, like Prolog, which was the high level language. Today is Java, today is containers. You can emulate whatever operating system you want. You can extend the processes outside of your environment, so you do not breaking the things. What are new trends in automation of the software, and can each of us, who like me totally lost the ability of coding anymore because I don't know the new languages or whatever, I'm away from this industry for 20 years, imagine or not. What is the new trends of automation, and can any person who has a different knowledge instead of coding can implement his knowledge using the software of today?
Yeah, I think you raised a really you know, valuable point, and a trend that has been happening for a long time, and that is that coding has become more abstract and more easier for people to do.
Exactly.
And that has been happening, and that is creating so much change and so many opportunities. Like if you go to VC 10 years ago to Silicon Valley, and if you're the person with business background or marketing background, and you pitch them an idea, and they will ask you, like, who is going to code this? Who's going to make the product?
Exactly.
And,
no one.
And you'll be able to say, well, no one. I don't have anybody to do it. And they'll be like, well, you need a co-founder. And that hasn't changed completely, but is in a way of changing, because there are some ways that you can have this minimum viable product, this like beginning product that you can have and you can show people, and it kind of changes the dynamic. For instance, like I've been working with an entrepreneur with exactly business knowledge. He understands this industry, he's passionate about it, and he doesn't know how to write code. And what he did was he was using one of those tools to create this small product. And he'll be able to, and he was able to test it and do some iterations on that. And honestly, like, he won't be able to build $1 billion company with that. Like, he needs coders to scale that, because when he gets to be usable product by many other people, there has to be still a lot of customization. But the dynamic of him, like, needing desperately a coder has been changed a lot, and like, and I think that's a very good trend, because it gives the ability of people who have ideas and who have that entrepreneurial spirit to actually do something, to create some products around the world.
Absolutely, I understand that, because let's make no mistake that only the guys from IT engineers are doing the innovation. Guys, that's not true. Innovation is happening in any industry, and actually we kind of have a burden of our IT education. So kind of we think that we are the only people who innovate. Yes, this IT is necessary thing, but what you do and what you just described is that anybody who has a good idea can implement that idea and translate to the computer language or whatever is needed to make it digital. Is that right?
Well, yeah, I mean, we are not completely at that point, so it can be any idea.
We're going
but
forward.
I think, like in Silicon Valley, there are many people that are sharing that vision. They're imagining this world when anybody will be able to like think of a product and be able to do it easily.
Wonderful, because one of my ex-colleagues from Microsoft actually left. What he is doing at the moment, he started his own startup, and recently realized he has a good team of coders and programmers. So at the end, he gave up that, and he decided that his team and himself can help those people who has ideas. So he kind of outsourced his company to whoever has the idea, and he's coding for them. And after they becoming big, they can hire their own people. But in this initial phase, he's kind of offering his services for that. Interesting enough, which is just confirm what you said. Okay, guys, Phil, you see, it's much easier to communicate with somebody who is in the room. Because I feel the emotions, whatever. Even the screen in HD, I see you, I hear you. It's not the same. Unfortunately, all of us discovered that very, how to say, painful way those days. Let me see if we have questions here. So if I can see here.
I can add one more point. What
go ahead,
just mentioned,
because we don't have many questions, to be honest.
When we are speaking about automation, programming, or what else, I can go to the level that we already have this in the children. I will give you one example, which is about Lego robotics. Lego robotics is exactly this. The idea is that the children to work with the blocks to create some logic, and after that they can see that robots is working and moving, doing something. And it is already here from the children. It is already started, and the idea is that maybe step by step going more and more complex, of course. From the other side, another example is that in the industry, which is, we are speaking about PLC, which is controlling the controller, which is controlling different devices in the manufacturing time. Generally, it is, I don't know, maybe 20 years old. There is a PLC language which is exactly block oriented. You have the blocks.
What was the name of the language?
Different companies they have their own.
Okay. So this kind of a proprietary. Okay, let me ask you and Phil then one very important question. Don't you think, guys, that some of the producers deliberately keeping this proprietary, so this can just to avoid this to be adopted by the competition and kind of keeping away from the commercial of the shelf kind of a thing, and they, for instance, I can give you home automation still do not adopt the Ethernet like a standard and IP like a standard, and I believe that this is deliberately. Of course, there is argument, there is a concrete, we need the most strong signals whatsoever, but looks to me what you just said, that in the robotics is very similar. Every producer created his own language and kind of environment, interfaces. Don't you think that this is kind of a big roadblock on the industry to be kind of a commercialized and spread? What do you think? Phil, maybe you can give your opinion on that.
Yeah, well, I think you're absolutely right. I think it was ladder logic we were describing before, which was implemented in different, subtly different ways across lots of different platforms, and with very little sort of cross compatibility. Sort of only in terms of the logic flow could you port some ladder logic from one proprietary platform to another. You couldn't sort of directly translate, or you couldn't easily directly translate the data. And yeah, I agree with you. I think it's a blocker, but I don't know what the answer is to making it go away. There are of course some open source platforms out there, like, you know, there's ROS, but getting industrial traction for ROS is incredibly difficult because, of course,
the new standard for Internet of Things, is that right? ROS.
Oh no, sorry, Robot Operating System.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I got it. Sorry.
So that's an open platform, but at the same time, we have the same kind of problem that we were discussing around the autonomous vehicles earlier on. If it's an open source community-based system that's being developed across lots of different parties, who takes responsibility if there's a malfunction or an undesirable consequence that ends up in damage or injury? So to some extent, the proprietary system and the ownership of those proprietary frameworks helps to pin the blame very firmly on somebody who created the hardware and the framework that goes around it. But yeah, I agree. It is quite encouraging to see a couple of different hardware manufacturers out there adopting a slightly more, what would you call it, collaborative approach.
Interoperability or whatever they call it. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, and I call it just playing nicely with others. So that there are a couple of big companies that I could point to who have adopted this idea that the ideal world might be that in a factory somebody adopts just their equipment, and so the whole thing is powered by one vendor. But you know, they're starting to realize the reality of any business, any factory that's been in operation for more than sort of 15 years is just not that. You have to be able to deal with legacy equipment and protocols.
Absolutely right, and I can give you a different example from other industry. Did you remember that we used to have a different manufacturers of the PBXs, also called PBX from a couple of vendors who trying to protect their handset to be working only with their PBX. Do you see what is happening today? We are using IP telephony widely, and nobody cares anymore if your telephone is compatible or not. You have common protocol, which is IP, and everybody can use it. So this is just an example. I understand that lawyers sometimes are more strong than engineers, let's put it that way. And I understand that robotics is very sensitive to the legislation because of the injury or whatever you mentioned, guys. But I believe that we are living in the global world, and in this world, collaboration will be the key word instead of isolation, protection of competition, or proprietary standards which isolated you. Even now, when all of us are isolated, we're still using the technology to be connected, like with you, Phil. And I'm very amazed by this conversation, guys. I don't know how much time we have. I believe that we are almost at the end, but it was a really interesting conversation. I hope that my little knowledge was enough to conduct this some proper way. Thank you very much, gentlemen. It was very interesting. It was my pleasure and honor to be with you today.
Thank you.
Bye, Phil.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bionics. The study of efficient operating principles from nature and applying them to the world of technology is a source of fascination for people around the world, especially children. For this reason, Festo has now initiated Bionics for Education, an interactive training concept that has brought the world of bionics to the classroom.
Bionics for Education ist deswegen so top, weil die Schüler letztendlich Dinge aus der Natur umbauen können, in die Technik mit ummünzen können und dort ihre Erfolge feiern, indem sie kreativ damit arbeiten. Das Schöne ist, dass wir mit den Schülern im Unterricht so starten können, dass die Schüler erstmal zum Lebensbezug in der Natur den Einstieg finden.
Bionics for Education, a construction kit and a digital learning platform in one that allows bionic prototypes to be built in a creative way. The kit includes a number of different functional and connector elements, a microcontroller, and servo motors. The integral training concept is thus an exciting alternative and can be used in subjects such as biology and technology and in various projects. The corresponding digital learning platform offers many additional features with biological background information and instructions completing the concept. Up until now, 3 projects could be creatively and individually implemented with the construction kit: a fish, an elephant's trunk, and a gripper based on the archetype of the chameleon's tongue.
Wenn man den Schülern am Schluss in die Gesichter guckt, da ist Freude zu erkennen, weil sie sehen, es geht auf jeden Fall. Es bewegt sich was, es schwimmt sogar was, es lässt sich was greifen, wenn dann auch noch was funktioniert und das Ganze einfach zusammenzubauen ist, dann ist die Stimmung großartig.
Wir haben Tiere, die es in Wirklichkeit gibt, eben in Technik umgesetzt. Und das ist auch was sehr Interessantes.
Mir hat auch gefallen, dass es auch mal was anderes war und nicht die ganze Zeit schreiben.
Auszuprobieren, wie man einen Fisch baut. Hat Spaß gemacht.
Bionic?
Working with bionics requires you to think outside the box. Bionics is therefore not only a topic for interdisciplinary teaching, but primarily a topic for the future.